Just going to give a couple more seconds to let people log on. Okay, I think we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to Career Conversations, a University of Rochester webinar series that helps you develop your existing talents, pursue new ideas, and navigate your personal and professional journey. My name is Michelle Cavalcani and I work in alumni relations, identifying and developing professional development resources and programs. Today's webinar, it isn't a formula, it's a discussion. Creating an authentic resume will not only provide information on format, do's and don'ts, trends, etc., but it will also present key ideas and ways for you to make your resume reflect who you are and what you are all about. I'm so thrilled to have wife and husband team and co-founders of Paradigm Partners, Barbara Grossman from the class of 1977 and parent of a 2010 graduate, and Jay Berger, also a parent of a 2010 graduate here, to take us through this resume review. They have decades of experience, and I think they will further introduce themselves throughout this program. And I really look forward to hearing all about this authentic resume idea. Barbara is co-chair of the University of Rochester, New York Metro Women's Group, whose mission is Women Supporting Women, and serves on the leadership cabinet for the University of Rochester Metro New York City Network. So Barbara and Jay have a lot of information to get through. So we're going to have lots of time for questions and answers at the end. I'm going to turn it over to them now. But I wanted to remind everybody that you can put your questions in the Q&A box and they will answer them at the end. And since we've received so many already, I want to let you know that if we do run out of time, that they will absolutely be able to follow up after this program. So with that, I'm going to say welcome, Barbara and Jay.
Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for inviting us to join you this afternoon. We're really delighted to be here, and as everyone now knows, but probably didn't until just 2 minutes ago, spending time with alumni is really something I love to do. Having been co-chair along with my partner in crime, Shirley Louie of the New York Metro Women's Group for a while, I spend lots of time with alumni from all classes and years, not to mention having family who are alumni, my son and daughter-in-law. So it's really kind of a family affair for us, and we're thrilled to be here. We thank all of you for spending your lunch hour with us. Talking about resumes is something we do all day, all the time. For most of you, it's probably about as much fun as doing your taxes. So we do appreciate that you're here with us this afternoon. As we were preparing for today, we realized we have about 8 hours worth of material to cover in the next 30 to 40 minutes, leaving time for questions at the end. And as you said, we're happy to come back for a follow-up session if that seems like people would like us to do that. The way we're going to approach this is Jay's going to start us off with just a very simple way to approach writing a resume. For any of you who are out there feeling a little daunted, maybe you haven't done this in a while, maybe you're doing it for the first time in your life, there's a way to approach this that we think will make it maybe hopefully a little simpler and just get you over that initial hump. And then I'll walk you through the framework of a resume, sort of the nuts and the bolts, and then Jay will wrap up with an approach we take that we do think is a little different. It's not something you find online as readily or in writing as readily, but we use it in our professional work, both with clients and with candidate coaching. And we have found it to be pretty effective. So we're going to share that with you. And then, of course, at the end, we'll leave time for your questions. Jay? You want to start?
So by way of personal introduction, I am married into the University of Rochester family. I helped produce a graduate with my partner. So I'm surrounded by yellow jackets, and I've been to probably more Meliora weekends than most alums. So I feel like I'm an honorary University of Rochester resident. with that, we're gonna try to dive in here. There's an awful lot we're gonna have to cover. So we're gonna go quickly and try to hit things that are important and hopefully circle back to any questions that you might have. One of the things that I want to start with is there's no such thing as the perfect resume. People panic over writing resumes. We see people who spend a month trying to get every word right, and there is no such thing as the perfect resume because beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Barbara looks at resumes one way, I look at resumes another way. We each have our preference. There certainly are not necessarily right ways to do it, but there are some wrong ways or some pitfalls or problems to avoid. And Barbara's going to go over that and we'll hopefully give you some added components that'll make it, give that authenticity. The three basic components of a resume, it's pretty simple. What you want to convey, to whom, and what you have to work with. All right. But the one thing to remember about a resume is it is a marketing document. All right. It's not a fact sheet. You don't want to sound like if you look at a product online and then they say specs and you look at the specs, that's boring, all right? You want the descriptors. So remember that it's a marketing document. You want to present yourself in a positive light, and you want to present yourself accurately. It's also a living document. We get to, when we talk to people, we recommend that they have at least 2, 3, if not 4 resumes, copies of their resumes, depending on, as the second bullet point says, to whom they want to address things. And by to whom, it's not only who's reading it, but the job you're applying for. A lot of times people will have several different, they may be a project manager, they may be a people manager, and a subject matter expert in like supply chain. So they have all 3 skills. And when they're applying for jobs, the job itself will be more one of the other. And if that's the case, you want that reflected in, well, Barb's going to talk about it later, the objective or profile. You also want to have your bullet points aligned so it emphasizes that more. So you're kind of tailoring it in different directions. And sometimes the resumes can be somewhat radically different depending if you want to change fields. But we'll go back more into that later on. It's not as daunting as it might seem because with word processing, you can move things around and highlight things differently. So it's not that scary. With that said, let's go back into the anatomy of the resume.
Thanks, Jay. So I feel compelled to have this give you forward to just about everyone. I will spend most of my portion of this on the profile summary section, which many people omit, but we feel is really a must, and on how to present your professional experience. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of all that, I do want to take a moment to just talk about algorithms for a second. This is especially relevant for anyone who hasn't done their resume in a while and hasn't applied for a job in a while. They are out there, you know, people moan about them, we mostly complain about them, and you go through the whole conversation of my resume goes into the big black hole, because in fact it does to some extent. Basically, so we're on the same page about what I'm talking about when I say algorithms, I'm referencing software packages that scan your resume for the specifications that are on their position description. So they're pretty much looking for keywords in text. AI does come into play more and more, especially for technical positions. I'm not sure that it's true AI and it makes the software smarter, but I don't know if it makes the hiring process better. That's yet to be seen. I have my doubts personally. The point is, what do you do about them? So we recommend you actually have a resume that when you apply for a position, you take your resume, you look at the position description, and you customize your resume for that position, which is why you're going to have really multiple resumes. It's a fact of life. Don't fight it, just embrace it. It'll make your life easier. And for any of you who are out there saying, I really don't have I don't know yet what I'm applying for, you know, I lost my job during COVID, or I'm a recent grad, create an ideal position description for yourself. Go out and see if any such positions actually exist, or people on LinkedIn have profiles who do what you would like to be doing, and just take that language, take the text out of that, that profile or that position and use it throughout your resume. So that's that for now about algorithms, and we're going to dive into the resume itself. Obviously, the first page is going to be your contact information. Your name goes right on top with any relevant licenses, degrees, or certifications. If you're applying for jobs that are different from what you've been doing, you may, and you're licensed in that in some way, you may want to leave that licensing off and include it later in your resume. You're going to want to have your email address. We recommend Gmail. You don't want to have Hotmail or Yahoo, you know, it's
AOL.
AOL, you kind of want Gmail, so find yourself a Gmail account. And you definitely want to link to your LinkedIn profile, which you want to make sure syncs up to your resume. It's going to be more spare, most likely, but it should match in terms of dates and positions. Please make sure you have a LinkedIn profile photo. It doesn't have to be a professional headshot. Go out in some natural light and have somebody, you know, use their iPhone and take a picture of you, or take one of yourself. But have a photo there. Avoid the Facebook, you know, pitfall of having tuxes or kids or dogs in your photo. Just have a nice clean headshot of yourself. They don't give you much room. The rest of what goes on your contact information is optional. We can address anyone's personal concerns or questions in the Q&A. So going into this profile summary that we insist is a must. Why do we think it's a must? Well, people hire people, not really backgrounds, even in spite of what they say or think. At the end of the day, they hire a human being. And you want to be able to convey who you are. And this portion of your resume allows you to do that. You exercise a lot of control over it. You can emphasize what you want to emphasize. You can leave off what you want to leave off. It helps to idiot-proof your resume. I'm not saying that to be pejorative. I'm saying that so that hopefully you'll remember I said it, and it'll trigger in your mind that you're going to provide the reader with a context in which to read all the rest of your experience, an academic background and volunteer work, whatever else you've done.
I'm not as nice as Barbara. I think that sometimes idiots are reading resumes, but idiot is more an indication of somebody who might not be knowledgeable too. All right, so that's why you want to put the language in place saying, this is what you're going to read below. And then you tell them exactly what they're going to see. So when they get down below, they go, oh, okay, I get it.
That's okay, fair. I'll give you that, Jay. And then finally, cover letters are really iffy. They may or may not be accepted with your applications. They may or may not be read. You really have no idea and you can't count on them. So what you might have traditionally conveyed in a cover letter, you kind of want to get at least some of that into this portion of your resume. It won't be all of it, but it'll be small, but you'll get at least some in. There are basically three components to the profile summary. One is, of course, the summary, which is anywhere from maybe 2 to 6 sentences or phrases, probably not longer than that, and optionally an objective and highlights. Thanks, Jay. This is an example of what a profile summary might look like. This is a real person I've been working with. I've changed her name to protect her confidence. But this is really her profile summary. She's someone who is in transition. She's been a clinical social worker and she would like to get into either academia in student wellness or the private sector in HR. This resume is actually geared towards the private sector. She has a couple. So she has a summary of those skills that she feels she's acquired during her clinical practice and experience that are readily transferable to the private sector. In addition, she did include an objective statement, and I recommended that she did because she's looking for a transition. You'll notice, by the way, up next to my name, not hers, I did not put her clinical social work licensing. And she does not have it either on her resume because that's not how she's applying right now. That background will be meaningful, but it's not what she wants somebody to focus on or say, oh, she's a social worker, she doesn't want this job. Going down, so her objective is to transition, and then she included a section, she called it core competencies. You might call it core strengths, you might call it highlighted skills, it might be key accomplishments. In her case, she wanted to emphasize these transferable skills that would be appropriate in the private sector.
When we spoke with this woman initially, she came in with a very clinical resume, talking about meeting with patients and seeing patients, and it was totally different from this. But that's not what she wanted to convey. It wasn't to whom she wanted to convey it. These were all skills and abilities that she had that were lying underneath that needed to be, well, put into a marketing document.
So this is how we structured hers. Typically, your core competencies or highlighted skills shouldn't be much more than this, maybe one more column. You don't want to dilute it too much, otherwise it's kind of self-defeating, and it doesn't look like it's your core strengths. It just looks like a laundry list of things you know. So that's the profile summary, and I could do 2 hours on that alone. So moving along quickly here into professional experience, how do you present it? Well, there's 3 basic formats. These are not CVs. We're talking strictly about resumes. CVs are for academics and for doctors and people who are highly technical in certain industries, but the vast majority of you are going to have a resume, and most of you will have a chronological one. A functional resume is only used in sort of some circumstances where you have a complex background, or maybe a big gap, or you've made a big career change and you're going to do something functionally. Even this person whose resume I've just shared with you, and you'll see again in a minute, it's chronologically based. A combined resume does combine both, and if you're going to do functional, you probably should do that. The other advantage to a chronological resume is the algorithms can read it better, as can humans. I'm not sure why the algorithms do, but I know I read it better because it's just what I'm used to seeing. I just want to take a moment to note that if you are a recent graduate and you don't have professional experience full-time, you would call this section internship/part-time experience, or maybe volunteer experience, and follow the same guidelines. The number one question we get about a resume is, how far back do I go? And my response is, if you were doing something 20 years ago, is it really relevant to what you're doing last week or 5 years ago? You probably don't want to go back more than 15 or 20 years, unless there's a real reason to. Maybe you worked at a place that you just have to have on your resume, in which case you might want to have a section underneath your professional experience titled previous experience. And in that section, you would just list your title and company or organization, no description, maybe dates, maybe not. Ageism is real for any of you who are out here who are like us, and you know, you want to be mindful.
As well, we've been doing this for 30, 40 years. I've been doing it forever. It has gotten less pronounced. I have seen in the last decade more organizations that are very open to, as I like to think of myself, a more mature gentleman or candidate. So it's not as bad as it was. Don't immediately rule yourself out.
And that kind of, but the conversation about how far back do you go and which leads into which positions do you include, and again, relevant. So you'll hear us both say relevance and relatable, or especially me. You want the positions to be relevant. If you had a career transition after you were working for 5 years, you don't need to include the position, whatever you did previously. Maybe you were a teacher and then you went into corporate learning and development. You don't need to include your teaching background. It's just not necessary, and it can actually be confusing. I saw someone's resume last week who's a data analyst, and she has been teaching as well, coincident with her work as a data analyst, and she included the teaching. And she hasn't heard this from me yet because we're not speaking till tomorrow, but if she's here, she will hear from me. You need to get that off. Like, it's just not helpful, and it's a distraction. The question also comes up about gaps, and people, of course, if you took 5 years to go do your own business and be an entrepreneur, you don't want to leave that out. And I'll talk more specifically about how to show gaps that are real gaps, not like that, on the next slide. One final note here would be for those of you who are recent graduates and you're saying, my work experience and internship experience has nothing to do with the career I want to do. I was doing work study. I had to work making as much money as I could during summers.
As a carpenter,
a construction worker, whatever, the phone company. Just note next to your experience that it was either a work study position or that you were self-funding your education. Believe it or not, that's super common, and people really respect it. So Here's gaps. These are two examples, one on top, one on the bottom. We say account for your gaps. It's not just okay, but it's a good thing to do. Human beings are wired up to fill in the gaps, and because we're wired up for survival, we fill them in with the negative stuff. We just make up negative things. So the first example is somebody who relocated. He was in a marriage where his spouse was on one coast, he was on the other. They got tired of that arrangement, and he relocated from LA to New York. So he had a gap. And
they did not split up. This is a happy story where they wanted to be together. We've had situations where they decide, it goes the other way.
And you account for that too. You just, family relocation, it's fine. The second example is one that's current, sort of current. It was this past spring, it's COVID related. This is somebody I was working with who was accepted by Google for a contract position in recruiting. In spite of it being contract, which I normally would not advise, it was an awesome opportunity for this woman, and she accepted the position. She gave notice, she resigned, and sure enough, just before she was about to begin her new wonderful job at Google, COVID hit, and Google rescinded almost all of their offers to contract workers. Who knew most of their staff is actually contract? And so we decided she wanted that on her resume because it was a good thing that she got this offer, but we needed to indicate that it was rescinded. So we included this link indicating that she was part of this cohort. It was an article that appeared in the Times. More often than not, you'll just say something like, COVID, just next to your position, if you've been let go or your company has gone out of business, you just say COVID-19.
COVID-related layoff.
COVID-related layoff. Or you could say company acquired by whomever acquired it. Or department offshore.
Relocated, yeah.
So those are all ways to just note the same sort of thing. Next slide is an example of how to present your professional experience. This is a format that I typically use. I like it. It's clean. It's easy to read. I'm killing two birds with one stone here by listing multiple positions together at one organization. We recommend, if you have been at a place for a long time, that you sort of do it this way, meaning that you have list the company one time or organization with the entire period of time you've worked there. Underneath, you put all of your positions and dates. If you want to go into each position more specifically, you could do that. In this case, her roles really overlapped and her responsibilities overlapped. So we bundled them and then just put a key accomplishments category underneath. I also like key accomplishments and do it regardless of whether you've had multiple positions. I think it allows you, it tends to be a results outcome driven section and people relate to it pretty well. So I just like this format. It also allows for continuity. When you've been with one place for a long time, it doesn't look like, if you list it multiple times, honestly, it gets confusing. Moving on to education, this is going to be pretty quick. You list your most recent degree first. It's usually your highest, not always, but it's usually your most relevant to your career path. So whether it's the highest or not doesn't really matter. You can drop dates anytime you'd like. We like to include majors. It kind of rounds you out. It gives a dimension to you that nobody would know without knowing that if you didn't list it. If you are out of school more than a year or so, you can start excluding your courses and all that kind of thing. GPAs you can include. I say over 3.6. Jay says over 3.4.
I'm not as smart as she is.
So I'll give him this one. But you want to get it off there after a year. You don't need it after that. Certifications and licenses. Lots of people have lots of them. You should include all you've got. You've worked hard for whatever you did. You took time out of your life for self-improvement. Even if they're not career relevant, there's a great course that's offered at Yale in happiness, and it's widely known. There's one at UPenn offered in grit. It's also, Coursera courses. You can include those. They're courses you took if you stayed with it long enough to get the certification. I took one of them and did not, but if you did, go ahead and list it. Again, it makes you human.
Or if you sommelier course or
Yeah.
pilot. You became a certified pilot.
Absolutely.
I mean, something that's interesting. Stay away from anything that's political, though.
Yeah, anything political I'd shy away from it unless you're in that industry. And otherwise, I would go ahead and put it in. Absolutely. Same rule applies for skills. Technical skills, foreign language skills, industry-specific things that you have. Sometimes you'll move those up to your profile summary, especially if you're in a technical role. But you can go ahead and list them in a different way in this section as well, or just list them here. If you have foreign language proficiency and you are really proficient, go ahead and list your level of proficiency. In fact, you can do that with lots of things. Excel's a good one. If you're really highly skilled in Excel, you probably want to say so. There are some others that I'm not mentioning, of course, but proficiency levels are good too. Under the personal section, which is optional, you don't have to include one. I say think relatable. You want to include things that are either important to you or meaningful about you, or that might be important to a future employer. By way of example, I keep on my resume that I was a trustee of a school board in a publicly elected situation, because education is really important to me, and I served. I keep my New York Metro Women's Group work on my resume because I love supporting women and work-related initiatives, and mentoring is super important to me. So I just do things that I think important to you or relatable. Okay, moving along quickly into how do you construct your resume? What are some of the mechanics of it? We've said now several times, you will have multiple versions, just accept it, don't fight it. It'll make your life easier. There are templates out there, go ahead and use them. Tweak them so they don't look so boilerplate, and avoid anything that's complicated. You don't want lots of complicated headers in graphic or layout formats. They'll just mess up the algorithms. It's not worth it. Density versus length. This is kind of important. I've seen resumes that are jammed onto one page. You can tell that the person was trying to avoid 2 pages. Just not a good idea. You want white space. You want it to be easy to read. And you want to use functional titles. I'm going to talk about that some more in a second. Avoid the pitfalls that are listed here. That's you can read those for yourself. Plagiarism is permitted. We talk and use it in yours. Proofread 1,000 times. Have someone else proofread for you. You will miss your own mistakes. I do all the time. And ultimately, put your resume into a PDF. There's some discussion about that, but I say do it. So it's worth it to not jump around, and it's worth it not to have pages lost. What is a functional title? A functional title is a title that describes and conveys what you're doing. An example that I use is we have a client where there's a title called Program Officer Social Welfare. The position is really a grant manager. When people move forward from that organization, they're going to need to probably describe themselves as grant manager there. It's just going to simplify their life. Another example is Jay's working with a candidate right now who's a VP of IT at a teeny little organization, company. It's himself, the CIO, and one other person. He's really a senior systems engineer, and those are the jobs he's looking for. If he uses
and the ones he's qualified for. The vice president is a title in his organization for him because he's valued and senior, but it's not what it doesn't translate to titles that you would run into in other organizations. So he'll either get looked over because he seems overqualified, or not be deemed not technical enough for what he is good for.
So one of the things that we encourage you to do is kind of leave your ego aside and really think hard about what you're trying to convey. A good example, I work with a global learning and development team at McKinsey, and people who are qualified for their senior specialist positions frequently come out of Citibank, but at Citibank they're VPs, and that's because they work for a bank. JP Morgan Chase, would be another example. You just want to get that VP stuff out of there. It's not helpful, and it won't.
And it helps with the algorithms too. You want something that sounds like an industry standard rather than unique to your organization.
This is my last slide. Keywords are a necessary evil. Actions speak louder than words. Use verbs. You want to convey the what and the how. For anyone who saw Joe Testani's presentation last week, he quoted BCG about companies need to be not just talking about what, but how for the careers of the future. That translates to humans too, individuals. You need to be describing how you do what you do. It's all about verbs, much less about adjectives. Metrics are the word of the century, the decade. Get them in there wherever you can. Write your resume in third person other than maybe your objective statement and possibly gap explanations. And finally, take ownership. I'll be a little politically incorrect. Gender caution here. We women, we write more passively than the guys do. Men do it too, but we are guilty of it more often. And we say things like, we participated in, we coordinated, we assisted. You want to use language like led an initiative, established, and so forth. You want to be accountable for your work. You don't have to have done it all by yourself, but you want to take accountability and ownership. Jay, you're on.
So that was about 4 hours of information in about 30 minutes. If we were doing this the way at a normal pace, probably would be time to break for lunch. But we're at lunch, and we're gonna push through. So I'm gonna try to get through. We're at the point now where when we first started, we said it's a conversation, not a formula. A lot of what Barbara's talked about is a little bit more on the formula side with some conversation thrown in. What we're about to enter into is more of the esoteric, which that's why I threw this quote up here. I don't know, I'm a big Broadway musical fan. Barbara groaned a bit and when I came up with this, because we have different personal formulas, which you'll learn about in a slide or two. I persevered in promising her that I wouldn't sing. So essentially what we're doing is an authentic resume is a conversation, you know, not a formula. It's the structure we just went through. And now you're at the point where most people say, okay, good. I kind of knew that. It's online. Now what? What do I do from here? Where do I go from here? What do I put in there? This is a formula, an equation that we have come up with more recently. It's something that we have been doing intuitively in our business for years and years and years. Essentially what we would do is we would be looking at individuals when we interview them. We try to get an essence for who they are. We try to look at basically how they navigated their career, what they were doing in their personal lives. And ultimately what we would come up with is their narrative. And we didn't even call it their narrative at the time. Maybe loosely we called it their narrative until recently when we decided to kind of form a distinction around this. Essentially what we would do after interviewing somebody is we would put together our own summary of who we thought they were, why they were capable of doing the job for the client we were going to present them to. We present the resume and what's more or less a more elaborate cover letter, but it's expected from our clients to give our impressions. In the last decade or so, we found that I started, and we both started, reading back the narrative to the candidate before they went in for the interview, kind of saying, well, let me let you know what they think they're getting in you, what I presented to them. And what I found when I would read their narrative back to them, quite often I would get like, wow, you made me sound terrific. And I go, that's you, right? I got concerned that I had missed something, you know? And they say, no, I mean, that is me, but you made me sound so good. And I'd be left with, you are. Well, you are. You're appropriate for this job. That's why I am presenting you. And what most people can't identify is some of their strengths. They can't see, they can't see, they don't lean towards the positive side. And so that narrative is an important, well, to be armed with that. But let's break this down and get back to resume writing if we can.
And for new graduates too. Recent
New grad
graduates.
for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody you want, your story is the way you connect with people. It's your authenticity. It's what allows somebody to touch you and get to know you. But let's get back to resume writing. The key to resume writing, we talked a little bit about showing up in your resume, authenticity. The key is to put you into the language of your resume, to have that show through. It's not just what you have done. Barbara talked about this earlier. Companies want to know how you've done it. And how you've done it is basically what you bring to the problem, how you solve the problem. Different people solve problems in different ways. Some of you bring your personal traits in that. We'll get to that in a second. And the last thing is injecting your impact or your personal stamp on your work. which is kind of a little bit like second bullet point, but a little bit of a twist there. When we sit down with candidates, what we do is we try to break down or understand what all of these traits. You've seen these traits before. You probably have associated yourself with these traits, but nobody really takes the time to be disciplined enough to say, what are the 4 or 5 traits that really best represent me? And that's an exercise we think that people should do before they begin their resume. And what's very important in this is be honest with yourself. All right. It's not about what you hope to be. It's not what you aspire to be. It's not what you think you should be in a particular job. I was 30 years old. I founded my company, my first company. I was 30 years old. All of a sudden, my business card said president. I had 3 people working for me. I was in Midtown Manhattan in a competitive business. And I said to myself, you know what? I need to kind of change who I am. You know, I was just Jay Berger, and I need to be Jay Berger. I need to be dynamic. I need to be decisive. I need to be a powerful leader. All right. And I walked around for a week like that, and it felt like a bad fitting suit. I mean, it just didn't fit. And in looking at myself again, I realized what I was collaborative. I was sensitive. I was creative. I was supportive. I was upbeat, hopefully persuasive. All right. And persistent. And it was like, these are the things that give me my leadership. These are the things that give me the power. And what I enjoyed doing was empowering people around me to do the best that they could do. Not only my employees, which was the case, but the people I put into positions. I became much more comfortable and better at my job, understanding where I was operating from. But let's get back to writing resumes for a second. All right. One of the other things about personal formulas that's very important is there is no such thing as a bad. Don't judge your personal formula. I picked out some traits here: structured, procedural, even-tempered, methodical, dependable, and deliberate. Some people might say rather boring traits. In this case, they're wonderful traits, especially if it's for an airline pilot. You don't want an airline pilot who all of a sudden is spontaneous and creative and says, you know what, I'm going to try to land this plane backwards today, right? You want him to do it procedurally, the dependable, the same way every day. Or he flies to New York every day this month. I go to New York every day. I'm going to go to Miami today. Not what you want. So there are personal formulas that fit careers like a hand in a glove. And when you're in that situation, you're more apt to excel and be happy. But let's get back to writing a resume, okay? I picked out 6 traits here, and we're going to go through collaborative and structured. All right, taking it a bit further, if you look at the before, assist in designing, planning, and implementing clinical research projects, a fine bullet point, might be on any resume anywhere.
Probably
all
a
right?
woman's.
And also reads a little bit more like a job description. It's devoid of any personality. It's rather bland. It looks like a job, like a spec, like a product spec. So if we try to take some of the traits that are listed on the left-hand side that we're working with and reword this: project lead in designing, planning, collaborate on the design and planning, structure design, initiated the design. We're starting to put your language, your voice, how you go about solving this. Other people who are more determined would do things differently. If they were different traits, and the language would be different. But that's just the beginning, and then we'll get more to the end result. So we started with assisting in designing, planning. We now get to tasked with redeveloping existing training event logistics process within clinical research. Initiative included collaboration, seeking consensus, lead, structured, and initiated. All right, with these bullet points, your language is in there. It's more reflective of not only who you are, but how you operate and get things done. Also, the kicker, as Barbara talked about earlier, is noted accomplishments, selected accomplishments, result 50% improvement in reducing time and expense, improving overall performance. Here's your stamp. Here's the result of the work. If you can quantify it, great. If you can't, qualify it. It resulted in improvement in reducing time and expense without the qualifier. We circle back. That's the personal formula. That helps in the writing your resume, but the other component here is your story. Your story will come in probably more with your profile development. It'll also come in and be invaluable in your interview and connecting with people. your story is not just it is your business arc, all right? Why you took certain positions, what you accomplished within those roles, how you benefited from what you learned, what didn't work for you, what you took away from it. And that's all well and good. You always want it to lean towards the positive side, all right? You don't want to badmouth a former employer. If it did, you can say one or two things or one thing that wasn't quite right, but now I moved to this, and it's always leaning forward and it's always positive. Layoffs are common, all right?
Especially now.
30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I started in this business, layoffs were a little less common. I was like, uh-oh. Now everybody experiences layoffs because of relocations, because of mergers, because of downsizing, because of COVID, you name it. So don't bemoan that. It's just like, okay, my time came up. It's all about being positive and saying, okay, now I have an opportunity to do something new. Now I have an opportunity to see, oh, I'm looking forward to finally making this change. Lean towards the positive. But also, there's the personal component in this, all right? You want to actually be open to bringing your personal life into your narrative. If all of a sudden you left because you were home taking care of your kids, that's fantastic. Hey, I had 5 years, I had time with my kids. I need some adult time. I can't wait to go back to work, all right? Things along that side. You left a job to be closer to home. Nothing wrong, because I have young kids and I wanted to be closer to home. It's okay to talk about failures. It's okay to say, I left my job to try this. I always wanted to work in an entrepreneurial way or in this kind of industry. And you know what? It didn't work out. And then pivot. Pivot from, this is what I learned. I'm glad I did it. I got it out of my system. And then you can show resiliency. You can show the takeaway that you learned something from it, that you actually are on this side a better person than you started. So there's nothing wrong, even marital breakups. I've had people who shy away from, there's a gap of 3 months. And I say, nothing wrong to say, hey, listen, my marriage didn't work out. We split. I relocated back to be close to family. Got my place, ready to go back to action. Refreshed and excited. Nothing wrong there. Authenticity connects. People like to hear. I've had candidates interview for jobs, and ultimately the feedback I get is that I like him, very good, competent, him or her, good, competent, capable, but I couldn't get a sense for who they were. I felt like there was something that I don't know. And so I think I'm going to pass, because people don't want any surprises. Remember, the one key, always keep it to the positive side, no matter what. You're looking forward. This is a great opportunity moving forward. You don't, that's a very, very important key that I want to leave you with. And the last thing I want to leave you with is getting back to personal formulas. Find coaches, great coaches say, the sign of a good coach is he knows his players' strengths and weaknesses. He knows what players are good at. He knows the situations that players excel in. And the sign of a good coach is to not only know their players, but put them in positions where they will succeed. It's the same thing for yourself. Now, some corporations are good at that. They see people, they see their abilities, and can align them with roles that fit. You can do that yourself. Keep in mind what roles might fit, because what you'll find is you'll be happier, you'll be more successful, you won't have to work hard at being day in and day out. But what we love to hear from our candidates is when they call us back and say, thank you, 6 months later, I never knew I could enjoy a job so much. This just feels so right. And I think,
Place to be done.
yeah, I think we're going, we could have time for questions. Help us, Michelle. What do we do now?
Wonderful. So you have your information there for anybody that wants to connect with you, but we will also send out that information in a follow-up. So don't worry about that last slide. We'll get right into the questions because there are so many that came in. I don't think we'll get to all of them, but some of them are more along the lines of format, and then some of them are the bigger questions. So I'm going to start you out with one of the bigger questions, which is advice for tailoring your resume when navigating a career change, especially when you have limited experience in your new desired field. Can you give a little advice for people who are looking to either pivot to new careers?
I think we get back to the personal traits. We get back to, or the skills that you had in your job that are transferable. Barbara was talking earlier about the clinical sociologist. So, she's a
social worker.
clinical social worker who wanted to change positions and wanted to be she wanted to go into industry. And when Barbara was interviewing her, she talked about, well, I worked on a project where we implemented new, and you want to talk about that, which gave her a skill set that was transferable. It was a subset of what she did, but it certainly gave her a foothold into the new industry.
Sure. So an easy example is during this time of COVID, she was very instrumental in helping her organization transition from in-person meetings with clients, which is what they had always done for the entire history of their existence, to telehealth. And they had to pivot on a moment's notice. A lot of companies and organizations had to do that. They were ill-equipped. They were, they're a non-profit. They don't have a lot of money. And she took the time and had the inclination. She loved doing it. So that was not her.
She project managed the
entire telehealth transition for them. Now, typically you wouldn't see that on a clinical social worker's resume, but that was a very key thing that she had done very recently. So we highlighted that in her, I don't know if we put it in her profile summary, but certainly in her bullet points. So that would be an example of something that if you have an inclination that you're good at something and you have some experience, even if it's not what you've done mostly or day to day, you can sort of focus on that. And that's just one teeny example, but that's how I would approach it.
And it makes it a lot easier interviewing because you're not saying, I think I can do that. You're saying, oh, in my last role, I was called on to do some of that, or I did that and I enjoyed it and I was very good at it. So that's why I'm pursuing it.
Thank you. Okay, next one is, this is interesting. Do you include all or any volunteer work that is political related? Very timely.
Only if you're going into a
only
political
if I agree
job.
with you. Only if I agree with you.
Only if you're going into a political position. Otherwise, leave it off.
Okay.
You don't want to say anything that might annoy someone.
Right.
So you don't want to be controversial in that way. I don't want to get into the controversy of like gender stuff, but political stuff, you just like leave it alone.
This is a case where if you really want to advertise that going in, okay, but just know that if somebody's reading it who doesn't agree with you, your resume is not going any further. So It depends on how much of a stand you want to make about it.
And by the way, your resume might be read by someone in HR, not the person who's ultimately hiring you. And if the HR person doesn't agree with you, your resume may not go anywhere.
But your future manager may.
See, don't sure things that people.
All right, we're going to keep moving on because we have so many. Okay, next one is, can you talk a little bit, and very little because we have a lot of questions, about why PDF is better than a Word document, and can it be read, when they're doing it through the computer?
Yes, it can be read, and the reason they're better is the formatting holds, it doesn't get changed, and also you don't lose pages.
Okay. Is there anything unique about a resume for an internal position that people should know about or include?
When somebody's, you mean
transfer? Like if they're already working for an organization and they're applying for another position within the same organization.
Can't give you, it's too individual a question to answer.
I'd say it's the same process. Yeah. You want to, to whom are you applying? It goes back to, what do you want to convey to whom and what do you have to offer? So it's the same formula basically. Okay.
So this is another question about the 1 page, 2 pages. Can you do 2 pages if it's okay? And I'm just going to give you a couple more to answer really quickly because I want to get to some of the other ones. So that's one. Also, another one is it okay not to have graduation years, or it's not important to have graduation years? Can you leave them off? So just asking again about that. And there was another one in here somewhere. You can start with those two.
Sure. There's no rule about length. It doesn't have to be 1 page. Most people's resumes should not be more than 3 pages at most, but I would vote for leaving some white space and margins and doing a good layout and having nice formatting over getting it onto 1 page.
And as far as dates of graduation, it depends. I mean, if you leave your dates of graduation off, Some people will think that you're trying to hide your age. So, I mean, if you are wanting to hide your age, fine, go for it. If you actually have graduated within the last 10 or 15 years and you're taking it off, or I've had people who've graduated with like within the last 2 years
And take it off.
and they take it off because they have more work experience, 5 years, and they don't want somebody to know they just have the degree. It depends on whether it benefits you or not. Sometimes it benefits them to know that you graduated recently rather than, you know, the benefit of them not knowing, because what's happening is they're reading into it and they're taking guesses.
All right. Moving quickly along here. On the topic of challenging prior work situations, you mentioned the need to stay positive, but you also mentioned the need to be authentic. What do you recommend in terms of addressing prior work traps without sounding bitter?
80 to 20. So you can say, I was in a situation where we had a leadership team was a little dysfunctional. We had to kind of fend for ourselves, but we were working at, a lot of people were working across purposes. As a result of that, what I'd like to do is move towards an organization. You know, I've been in the past, I worked for organizations where everybody's rowing in the same direction. I'd like to go back into that kind of situation. And then you can talk about what you learned from that organization. It was great because I had the experience to touch on this and this and this, blah, 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 blah. And I want to take that forward. So you want to go to the 80% of the positive, 20% of the negative. And be careful not to personalize things. All right, everybody, I mean, layoffs, we see it all the time. People, you know, either they will personalize layoffs or even bad work situations. Like the manager was so, and it's like, all right, it's a bad man. That was their problem, not yours, you know? So move forward with it.
By the way, I think there's a lot of literature out there that says that the number one reason people leave jobs is because of their managers. So everybody knows kind of that that's a thing, even if you don't know that that data exists. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to make it personal. You always, Jay's right, it's 80-20. You can mention that something didn't work, but you want to focus on what you got from it nonetheless.
You don't have to hammer home how horrible that person is. The minute you say, the management was was a dysfunctional situation or was a bad management situation, you can go on because the guy across the way has been in those situations too. The guy or gal across the way, whoever's interviewing has been in that situation, so they get it.
Okay. A couple of questions. So you mentioned ageism before, and we got a lot of questions from people who have a number of years of experience. And I'm going to try to just kind of say a couple of things just to kind of group them together because for time's sake. So one of them is, what resume advice would you give to people who are 55 plus, who desire a profession change from, say legal to teaching, or, so a lot of people are pivoting. And so I know we talked about, transferable skills, and I'm just wondering, so there's a couple of things like that, sort of like job transition within industry, but then also people who are asking, should we avoid putting dates on there for our, the number of years we worked at a certain organization so that we avoid the bias completely?
I don't think you can hide how long you worked somewhere. So let's take the last piece of that first. I think if you've been a lawyer at, or a partner even, in a law firm, a small law firm, let's say, for the last 20 years, I think you certainly want to say that. For one thing, it's a good body of work, right? And that's who you are. I think the key to this answer, and Jay, you might have a different take on this question. I'm sure you will actually, because we're different. When you're pivoting after a long period of time, you want to look at the things about the experiences you've had that qualify you for what it is you want to go to. So most people who are pivoting later in their careers, really later, like 30 years in, are looking to probably do something that they've always maybe wanted to do or really enjoyed doing. Jay, an example is Jay. Jay was a coach when our kids were younger, and he was about 15 years into a coach, like a team coach, right? Like on an athletic team, not just
soccer kids.
Soccer kids, right? And at some point, he was probably about, 15 years into his career when I looked at him and I said, you would have been a great teacher. Like I am not patient, he has patience. you kind of look at those, get back to that personal formula and your narrative and all that. You want to look at those kinds of things and think about what you've done that you're bringing to this next move. So with regard, so your age is going to be there. Like you can't, at some point you can't hide it, period. So you don't necessarily want to throw it into the mix right away as a glaring thing, but you don't want to totally run away from it either. And what you really want to focus on is, what is it about what you've done that gives you access to what you want to do?
Yeah, and I've seen people that have worked at a company for like 40 years, and what they'll do is they got a promotion 20 years ago, and so they just mention what they've done the last 20 years, and they don't go back 40 years. They drop the first 20 years, and when you interview them, they say, well, actually, I was with the company for 40 years before that, whatever, but it wasn't relevant. So that's one way to get around that. There's something to be said for embracing maturity. There's something to be said for what you have. If you are a 55 plus, you're a lot different than a 25-year-old, and where the 25-year-olds right now have the reputation of being someplace for a year and then moving on. And what are you going to do for me? If you're 55 plus, you say, hey, you don't want to put this in a cover letter, but what's in the background is loyalty. You know what it is to work. You've been steady. You show up on Monday morning at the appropriate time. So you're trying to bring out those traits are underlying when you're presenting yourself. But also it is what are those transferable traits? The problem that most people have is they don't understand. They take for granted what they know because they've been doing it all along.
Fish doesn't know it's swimming in water, right?
Yeah, fish doesn't know it's in water. It's so you're in it and you don't even understand your strengths, like the clinical social worker. She didn't realize, like, these are assets.
Yeah, by the way, it took 3 or 4 conversations and several iterations of her resume to get to the point where she could finally see it and embrace it. So
rewriting her narrative to a certain extent, putting something different in there, different story in there.
Okay, there's a question about information classes that you take online, like let's see, edX or LinkedIn Learning. They want to know, how do you put these kinds of things on your resume? Should you put them on? They're trying to sort of, bolster their experience in education. So where does this go?
It either goes in the certifications, licenses, in that section, or in a skills section.
Education.
It could be education under, yes, you could totally do education, and then under your degrees, you could put related relevant professional development. Professional development is probably how I would title that. So there are a number of places you could put it depending on exactly what it is.
Okay. Let's see, there's so many. This person says, I started in education, moved, married, and switched to corporate telecom. 14 years later, after a layoff, returned to education. I feel the resume is too long. This is kind of specific, but I need to include it all because the experiences are relevant in educational leadership. So I guess they're looking for your yes or no on that.
We missed a little of that.
Oh, I'm sorry, our internet froze there for a second.
Okay, it said, I started in education, they moved and married, they switched to corporate telecom, and then 14 years later, after a layoff, they went back to education. They're thinking their resume is too long, but they need to include everything because it gives relevant experience in educational leadership. So I think they're looking for your blessing or your advice on that one.
You could just shorten the first stint in education, depending what kind of education it was.
And also,
telecom,
you can put, so you could do a combined, this is one where you could do a combined functional resume, right? So you could have your educational experience and your other experience, and you'll have the years, but the chronology won't be in order. It may be out of order. So if they're looking for a job in education, you want to focus on the education at the top and put the telecom, even if that's the most recent experience, beneath it. I would caution that if you're making a transition because of a layoff, you probably want to frame that so that you're not presenting like the only reason I'm doing this is because I got laid off. You want to be authentic, but you want to have some degree of, I really want to get back. This is a good reason for me to go back to education now.
Yeah, and as a result of this layoff, we took stock of taking stock of what I enjoy doing. And you know what? I really love teaching, and I miss it.
By
So-
the way, COVID is bringing up for people at all ages. I hear people who are 2 years into their career, still in college, and people who are 40 years out saying, this pandemic is causing me to rethink what I want to be doing. That's not unusual right now.
We're just at the 1 o'clock mark. I can't believe it went so quickly, and we have so many more questions. And as we said in the beginning, we will definitely get those questions answered for everyone. I will share them with Jay and with Barbara, and make sure that we get some of these we did cover in your presentation. So I think that the ones that we haven't covered yet, I'll give them to them, and they'll be able to definitely get some answers for those. Jay, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, and if share our emails with everybody, we're happy to answer. We'll answer every single question.
Yeah.
So have people reach out to us, and we're happy to, you know.
And we'll do a follow-up session as well.
If
If you would like us to, or anybody would like us to come back, and we could do a follow-up session of just question and answers if people want us to.
Wonderful. I think that would be wonderful. I will be sending out again the videotape of this presentation. And thank you so much. This was so wonderful. Jay and Barbara, you did such an amazing job and such great information. I know that there'll be more programs hopefully in the future. I will be sending out, along with the video, I'll be sending out the survey just to get some feedback from everyone. Please feel free to send me your comments, and feel free, as they've offered, to send your questions to Jay and Barbara. And with that, I think we're going to have to end for today. So thank you again for your time. It was wonderful, and hope to see you both soon.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for
Thank
the
you
opportunity.
very much. Have a great
All right.
day, everyone.
Bye.
See you next time.